Can the Alabama Crimson Tide legend from Honolulu, Hawaii be the savior that revives the Miami Dolphins organization? How you guys doing? It's Saturday, May 30th, 2020. I'm James Sims in the middle of this quarantine. And today I'm just going to talk about the future of the Miami Dolphins organization, or at least the future quarterback who's going to be there for a long time and who I think is going to make the Miami Dolphins a relevant organization again. Right now, I'm just going to get into why I think Tua Tagovailoa is just one of college football and will be one of the NFL's most premier young players, both on the field, and he's going to be a complete star off the field. So right now, before we get into this, I'm just going to dive into who just Tua Tagovailoa is, just give you a little bit of background, and then I'll just go into why I think Tua Tagovailoa is one of football's best young talents, and as soon as he starts playing for this Miami Dolphins organization, he's going to change it, turn it around, despite his past of injuries and just criticism from all over. I guess really just starting out to where he was in high school. I mean, he went to high school in Hawaii. He went down in history as one of the greatest quarterbacks in Hawaiian high school football history. I mean, he threw a lot of touchdowns in his 4 years there. I don't have the numbers really on hand, but of course he was one of the that's really all that really needed to be said. It led to the point where he was rated by as a 4-star by ESPN, and he'd eventually sign at Alabama under Nick Saban, where he would kind of grow into the player that he was really expecting to be. Even before that, he was highly regarded by quarterbacks in his class as probably one of the best quarterbacks. He competed at the Elite 11 camp in, I want to say, Malibu. It's in one of the beaches in Los Angeles. It's at one of those high schools. And he went on to outperform all the other quarterback prospects, which I think was, and I was there to really see how good of a player he was. So at that point, I was really aware of how good he was. I didn't expect him to be as good as he was at Alabama. Like I said, he'd go and play for Alabama. His first year, he was a freshman playing under starter Jalen Hurts when Jalen Hurts started at Alabama as a sophomore after his amazing freshman year. And of course, Tua wouldn't play that many games. He only played 8 games. He would play when Alabama was blowing out opponents. In the games that he played, he was able to complete about 64% of his passes, throwing for 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and with 636 yards in the 8 games that he played. It was pretty impressive. And then once he gets to the championship game, I mean, they would blow through Clemson in the Sugar Bowl that year to make it to the college football championship, where they found themselves down by at least 2 touchdowns to Georgia at halftime, where Tua Tagovailoa would come back, lead them to a second half victory off of a 2nd and 25 or 2nd and 26. To eventually go on and beat Georgia and give Nick Saban yet another college football championship. And that game was yet another game in which Tua Tagovailoa didn't even start, but he came in and became an Alabama legend basically in one half. This is the same player, I think, and I think it still speaks. It speaks to how good and elite of a quarterback he is to step in at that moment as a freshman and lead Alabama against a very strong, very formidable Georgia defense. And I'm pretty sure every player that was on that Georgia defense is either in the pros now or is still at Georgia. That's how good this Georgia team was, and they beat them not handily, but they beat them pretty handily. They kind of were. They dominated the second half of the game, and Tua Tagovailoa was a big reason, if not the reason, that Alabama came back, won that game, and won the last championship, the most recent championship that Alabama has won in 2017. In 2018, he would go on to start and play every single game that year, completing 70% of his passes, which is incredibly hard to do in the SEC with all of their defenders and secondary players that make it to the NFL. He would finish the season throwing for almost 4,000 yards, rushing for about 200, so it's over 4,000 total yards. He would throw for 43 touchdowns, run for 5, so he's responsible for 48 touchdowns, and he only had 6 interceptions on the season. Pretty much on the way to setting himself up and setting Alabama up for, once again, a deep playoff run where they would go to the championship. They would go on to beat Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl before losing to Clemson and Trevor Lawrence in the college football championship. They went 14-1, and they just lost to a better Clemson team. Tua Tagovailoa still had a pretty great year that year, and that was his first full year starting. And I guess he had some injury problems, but he was still tough enough to play out the entire year in a very tough SEC conference and pretty much just put up numbers like this in a way that not other college football quarterbacks can, especially following the championship performance that he had and with such high expectations at the University of Alabama to come in and put up elite numbers at Alabama with LSU and Auburn and Texas A&M and Ole Miss and Mississippi State on your schedule every year, and then you have teams like Georgia and Florida and the SEC East that you're playing almost every other year on your schedule. So that's kind of the point that I really want to make with Tua. And then really going into his junior year, he only played 9 games because he was dealing with his knee injury. He ended up completing 71.4% of his passes, throwing for 2,840 yards. He finished with 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. That's an 11-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. That's the math right there. And he would go on to have an amazing junior year for the ages. And of course, he didn't play the full year, so there's no point of using hypotheticals. But in this case, I do believe that Alabama was set up to win a national championship this year. And had Tua Tagovailoa been healthy the entire season, Alabama would be sitting on another championship and Tua would have another Heisman. But at the end of the day, things didn't play out that way. Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers had an amazing season. Played against, and I mean, even in that game, Tua tried to play the best he could. I don't even know if he played that full game because I know he was hurt that game. But long story short, Alabama, even though they were favored to win the championship at the beginning of the year, couldn't finish through at the end of the year because, of course, Tua Tagovailoa was dealing with knee problems that kind of lasted up until the beginning of the quarantine. But as of right now, his knee's all better, so you don't have to worry about that. So after all he's done in college after the championship where he came from behind, the full season that he played that inserted him into the into the discussion of best quarterback in the country, and the third year that he never fully finished, but was what was destined to be his all-time great season where he would secure the Heisman and the championship, but it never came. But that's just the player Tua Tagovailoa is. Following that, he would eventually cement himself as one of the top prospects really in all of this draft. And there is an argument as to whether he or Joe Burrow deserved to be drafted number 1 following the last season. I guess the argument came to, are they going to pick the guy who's shown he's been an elite level quarterback since day one, but has injury problems and is 6'1", or are you going to pick the Heisman coming off an amazing season, even though it was 1 year, who's bigger, stronger, and probably has and is less injury prone. I think the Bengals took the safe pick in picking Joe Burrow, but I still think that the better player in the long run is going to be Tua. I didn't include Joe Burrow in this list because I need to see him be elite for a whole other season. But I've seen Tua from the day he was from the start, or from the day he entered the limelight as one of the top prospects from the state of Hawaii to getting to Alabama. Every time he stepped on a field, he's never disappointed. And I think it speaks more to him that he was able to go to Alabama, take on the starting role as a freshman, and then never lose it up until he left. Especially at a school that can recruit quarterbacks like Alabama, he was able to rise up to the occasion, do what he needed to do, exceed expectations, which landed him to eventually get drafted by the Miami Dolphins. And I guess looking at this, there's not a lot of comparisons to him. I guess. Because he is small, he's not really going to move as much, and you expect him to make very nice, completable passes. The only comparison I can really make for someone that's his size that can throw like he throws and kind of move like he moves is probably a young Drew Brees. And Drew Brees is also very injury prone throughout his time in the league. I think for him it was his shoulder. But I mean, injuries kept really keeping him out, and of course, people were questioning how good he was based on his size. You could also say Russell Wilson just for how he is and how Tua is a little bit more mobile. But I guess that's really the difficulty in all this because there isn't a quarterback that's like Tua. But I guess Even with this Miami Dolphins team, they tried their hardest to at least draft some offensive linemen to put around Tua, and I expect that to be their priority for the next couple of seasons. Once they build an offensive line around him and keep him from getting sacked, then they can start giving him options in the passing game, options in the run game. Because from what it looks like, and especially with the NFL and how they're able to franchise tag players, like knowing, because I feel as though Tua is going to be so successful in his first few years, I don't think Tua is going to leave Miami for a while. He's not going to get traded. They're not going to let him go to free agency because I think even if you're just a really good quarterback, teams in the NFL will franchise their quarterbacks unless they feel like they can't really go forward. And because there's that specific little clause, I think that the Dolphins are going to plan to hold on to Tua Tagovailoa as long as he plans to be there, especially, I think, minimum the first 7 years of his career. So, like, even now, I think the plan for the Dolphins is to just give him an offensive line where he can sit back and make his throws. I think for now, they're probably going to get free agents and make trades for wide receivers, but they should eventually start drafting receivers high up so they can give Tua his targets that he can work with and grow with. I like Miami's idea of building around Tua. I really hope that's their idea. And later on down the line, I think Tua is definitely the type of quarterback that you can drop in a playoff environment, and he's still gonna help your team win. If two teams are evenly matched, I think Tua is enough to make the offense to help the Dolphins at least win some playoff games eventually. But I mean, I could go on for days talking about hypotheticals because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, he's very injury. He suffered a couple of ACL injuries, which is bad. It's just really unfortunate. So I mean, at the end of the day, he could just up and retire early, like a lot of players now. But in the case that he does play a long career, I think it'll be really fun to watch Tua Tagovailoa. He's a fun player to watch. Even his throws once he releases it from his fingers, he has one of the most on target. He throws one of the most on target balls in all of football, including professional players. His timing is almost perfect. I mean, I don't even know if his height's really going to be an issue. I think he has an amazing arm. He can make almost any throw on the field, and you can give wide receivers the most complex instruction, and Tua will make sure that the ball leaves from his hand in the pocket to a receiver literally anywhere on the field. He's incredibly smart enough to make intelligent throws. I also think he's incredibly risky where if he sees the one-on-one, he does throw it. He does throw it to the toss-up. Like, more than you'd think, but I think that's what makes him an exciting player because a lot of time he trusts the receiver that he throws it up to in one-on-one situations. The receiver is usually better, and he can trust the receiver to come down with the ball. I guess one argument you can make against him is that he did play at Alabama with elite receivers, but that just means he can handle elite receivers when he has them in front of him. I don't think that's really a disadvantage. I think as a professional organization, I would appreciate to see if the quarterback that I'm picking to be the future of my franchise that I'm going to cash all my chips in, I would hope that he can dominate with receivers that are better than average, so that if I put receivers around him and seek to build and invest invest everything in this organization and put it around him, I have faith based off what I've seen him do in Alabama. I think out of all the quarterbacks in this draft class, Tua is the only quarterback that I would consider elite at this very moment, just based off his resume and what he's been able to do as such a young player. I mean, after all, he's only 21. His whole NFL career, or he's 22 now. His whole NFL career is ahead of him, and I mean, as of right now, I mean, the sky is the limit for this kid. I hope he stays. I hope he stays uninjured for most of his career, and I really hope that he will do. I hope he changes this. I hope he turns this Miami Dolphins organization around because I know he's the player that's capable of doing it. Thank you once again for just tuning in, listening to hear what I have to say about Tua. I really like Tua. I like watching him at Alabama, and sometimes he's one of the few players that you can really see is elite coming out of college just based off what he's done in college. Many of the NFL players right now, I mean, there's always a fun prospect to find, but unless they're making waves in college, I can't really I don't know if I can really trust them in the pros unless they're consistently doing it. I don't know. Tua is one of the few players that I know, and I normally wouldn't give it to a player who recently got drafted. But I think Tua is that player, and I think Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are going to be those quarterbacks next year. I think that concludes all of the college football players I have. They're all really great, and I think Tua, out of all the quarterbacks, might be the all around the best NFL player out of all of them. But you never know. I'm saying may because it's a hypothetical, but I guess the best thing to do is to watch. They play in the AFC East with the Bills and the Patriots, who are both really, really good teams. So, I mean, they should be watchable. Their team is pretty garbage, but, well, I mean, compared to the rest of the NFL, I mean, they're still professional football players. No, but, I mean, if you ever get the chance to watch the Miami Dolphins, just watch Tua Tagovailoa play. Watch how he sets. Watch how he watch how he picks apart NFL defenses with the talent that the Dolphins have, which right now I think is only Devontae Parker and a bunch of other receivers, and he has a competent running back. But I think that the roster that they have now won't be the roster they have when he's at his best. He's only 21, and as of right now, you see quarterbacks are playing to their 45. So, I mean, best case scenario, he's in this game for a very, very long time, and we'll see if the Dolphins choose to sit him early on, but I really don't think they will. But as soon as he starts, wow, it'll be very fun to be a Dolphins fan over the next couple decades. And with that, I appreciate it. Once again, I'm sorry. I didn't sign out earlier, but now I officially am. With that, I'm going to say peace.